what I want to do as we conclude our gathering this morning, I want us to think. Pastor Brick kind of just led us in a time to really think and reflect on our lives as individuals. And what I want to challenge us as we kind of close this morning is to think about our lives collectively as Vintage Church. If we're talking about as individuals what our next 9 years are going to look like, what we've reflected and we're thinking about that faithful excellence over these past 9 years, what does that look like for us as a church? And what I want to encourage you this morning is to think about some next steps, okay? So a little over 2 years ago, we launched what we called the More Initiative. And the More Initiative was something that we started a little over 2 years ago. If you've been around Vintage for a while, you know about it. I want to encourage you on your seat. You have these More booklets. If you're new to Vintage, check that out. That's a resource for you. It's got a ton of information in there that are resources for you, but also answer some questions about some of the stuff with the More Initiative that we've been walking through. The other thing that you have over the past 2 years, we've given you these. It's called what we've called a one-pager. And there's some information that I want you to think about. In particular, I want you to turn to this page where you see this pathway and the ladder. And this is what I want you to think about. What would it look like over the next 3 months, right? October, November, December. December 2017, we're wrapping up the More Initiative. What would it look like in these 12, 13, 14 weeks for us to finish strong, to pursue faithful excellence into the beginning of the new year in 2018. And so I want to give you some next steps for us collectively and as individuals to think about for our church, okay? So on the page there, you see the Vintage Pathway. The Vintage Pathway is something that we created and brought out a couple months ago when we started our Connect track, which we're going to talk a little bit about. But the Vintage Pathway is all about thinking about discipleship. We believe that people kind of come into the life of Vintage, and we want to think about what would it take, what's it going to take for people in the life of Vintage to grow and mature in their faith in Jesus. And that's what this pathway is all about. So for a lot of people, that starts with gathering, right? Simply coming here on a Sunday morning. This is a first step for many people. And gathering is important. And we do it every week because for 2,000 years, the church has been doing this very thing. Gathering is important, but we want to see people connect into the life of Vintage Church. It's not just enough to come here, but you want to connect into the family. So we're going to talk about some ways that we do that at Vintage in just a little bit. We don't want you to just connect, though. We want you to partner. Partnership at Vintage Church is membership. We think it's important that you partner with a local church, that you get not just connected, but committed, right? And then finally, lead. We think some of you, because of the way the Lord has gifted all of us, we are gifted in some form or capacity to lead. And how is the Lord calling you and growing you to lead? And then as you kind of look at it, that send option there. Listen, some of you might be called by the Lord to go across the ocean. Some of you might be called to go to another state. Some of you are simply called tomorrow to wake up and go to work or go to your neighborhood or go to your office. And so the Lord is sending us out in many different ways to continue His mission around this city and around the world. So what I want you to think about this morning is as some next steps. What are some good next steps that you will be able to take for the next 9 years to pursue that faithful excellence as a church? We've got one, the Connect track. This is something that we launched a few weeks ago, a couple months ago. The Connect track is the best way to take next steps at Vintage Church. There we talk about following Jesus. We talk about discovering your gifts. We talk about joining community. We talk about partnering with the local church. And so if you're new to Vintage or you have questions about these things, I want to encourage you. We're launching our next Connect track October 22nd. And you can get more information at vcnola.com/connect with us. We have a sign-up sheet out at our atrium. But at the Connect track, we're also going to talk about what it looks like to join a group and what it looks like to serve on a V team. Those are just two other ways that you can connect in to the life of Vintage Church. Why are those important? Because we believe, number one, that God's called us to be in community with one another. That's where we experience life transformation. Number two, He's called us to serve. And so our V teams here at Vintage are just opportunities for us to be able to serve the Lord and serve one another. Now, listen, are these the magic bullet? Is this the silver bullet? Like if you do this, you will immediately be like Jesus and things will be fantastic and you'll experience the best life possible. No, not necessarily, but these are environments that we believe that the Lord is going to move and work in and mature you in. And so as you think about not just these past 9 years, but these next 9 years, I want to encourage you to take these opportunities because I believe in those environments, the Lord's going to move and work and grow you, okay? So Pastor Brick's going to come and talk to us about one more step before we close.
Yeah, so that's what Dustin talked about is really more leveraging of our time. That's a resource that we have. And I want to just sort of first overview a little bit about the MORE initiative. Maybe you're new and you can pull out this one pager and look. The front of this sort of summarizes. There's really 3 components to the MORE initiative. There was more resource for our church. That's what we were already doing. That was our generations, our arts, our ministry, our operations, things like that. Then there was more environments, right? It involved us expanding this facility. It involved us changing some things at the Arts Center. And then there was more impact. We wanted to see some of our resource, our financial provision go to some church plants and to some partners and to even use some local and global sort of outreach type of things. And so that really overviews it for you. If you need a quick summary, your book is more of a detailed, sort of came out in 2015. It's a little dated, but it will also give you others. But that's really the summary. And I want to, in my time first, before I talk about just sort of our year-end goal that we want to set before you this morning, is just sort of give you a little bit of a report, a generosity report. And this is all based on projections that I think we'll have through this Sunday, through this day. We're sort of looking at being at a place of $596,000 through the end of this Sunday. And you sort of say, what does that mean? Well, our budget for this year is $800,000. It means we need about $66,000 a month, about $15,000 a week. And so now you take that, and we're doing okay. I want to sort of lay before you the year-end goal. And there's one number we want to sort of put before you. We want to begin to pray for and begin to sacrifice towards, which is $300,000. That's what we need by the end of December, okay? What does that mean? Well, it's sort of made up of sort of 3 numbers. You might be overwhelmed with that number. Let me break that down for you. The first is this. We're in a deficit right now of about $25,000. We've been sharing that over the last 2 quarters. It's not a big surprise. A lot of our giving comes in every year between October and December, but that's what that number roughly is right now. Our regular giving is the next number. If we're just faithful vintage of who we have within our church to be faithful to give, we will see $175,000 come in. That's October, November, and December. So be faithful to your commitments. And then the other number is a generous giving, right? We don't want to just, hey, what do we have now? We want to say, what would help really set us up, right? Like what would help us propel into 2018 strong? What would help us sort of maybe do some, not just commitments like, hey, here's what we're giving you. What if we could bless some of these church planners some extra? And so that's $100,000. That's what we're sort of praying for. That's sort of what makes up this $300,000. Now, that's a lot of numbers, and a lot of you probably haven't, again, heard anything I've said because you've been looking at this picture that I put up on stage. And this is something that we brought out when we started the MORE initiative. It's an image, it's an object that we use to sort of teach our church, right? Does anybody know what this is? It's a Mardi Gras ladder. It's okay to say that, right? This is your pastor's personal Mardi Gras ladder, okay? So you won't be judged if you have one. It's okay. But when I see this, I want you to think just very quickly, right, what this picture is. For me and for my family, it's a picture of joy, all right? I remember this past Mardi Gras season, the 2 weeks that we celebrate, right, of being with my kids and my family, my V group and some of the others in our church, and kids sitting all up in here, right, enjoying the parade, right? You that don't have ladders, judge us. I know, we get all the best stuff up there, right? And that's the picture. That's the purpose of it, right? This makes your Mardi Gras so much better, right? If you take a kid in a ladder, you get so much better experience at Mardi Gras, okay? I would recommend it. And this is what I want to tell you. At the top of this here is joy, right? And that's the picture I want you to think about, because what we use that to teach is what we call the generosity ladder. And there are a sense that we say, well, how can we get to this, Pastor Brick? How can we see this $300,000 happen? How can we not only meet that goal, maybe even exceed that goal? And I want to sort of put before you these steps. The first step is that of a first-time giver. This is a great way to connect. We've talked about your leveraging of your time, but I would also say your resource. God has blessed you. We invite you today to become a first-time giver. Step onto that ladder through becoming a first-time giver. The next phase is what we call the occasional giver. That's if we show a really, really sappy, sad video, you guys give us some cash in the offering, right? What it means is this, right? We take all those guys, by the way, even Ben Franklin, okay? But the occasional is this. You don't have a plan. Just whatever we trigger your heart is sort of when you sort of give. And that's the occasional level. It's okay. We need some of you to step to that area, right? And begin to do that. But I want to really talk about the top of the ladder, because the next one is what we call the intentional phase. This is where you have sat down and your giving is regular, it's focused, and it's a percentage of your budget. Whether that's 2 or 5 or 7%, you have some kind of intention of giving to Vintage. You have made some commitment. You have sort of focused in to become an intentional giver. And we need some of you to take that step. Some of you occasional first-time givers, just this next 3 months, if you could step up to the intentional, it would help Vintage out so much. Continue to worship Jesus and focus on His work. And then there's the faithful level. We call this the level of 10%, right? This is what we believe is a great starting base that all of us should work towards as a Christian, to start here. That the first 10% of our income that we receive goes back to Jesus and helps Him in our church expand the gospel. And then there's the extravagant level. This is a sense where we give above 10%, right? I want you to know that in the last 3 weeks, we've received an over $12,000 check from someone in our church who went from the faithful level to the extravagant level. And we praise God for that. Maybe some of you, God is going to bless, God's going to work, and you're going to take a step and make some extravagant gift. That's what we're praying for in these next few months. And so I want to invite you. We as a church are up here. We're having a blast. The last 9 have been nothing compared to what the next 9 is going to be. So join us. Get on the ladder. Begin to step up to your pathway of joy, not only in your life, but in our church life as a whole. It's not just about this 3 months. I want to close my time before Dustin comes back up, focusing on the bottom part. We gave you another sort of handout, another sort of reminder. We are beginning right now, within the next 6 to 7 weeks, to sort of lay out assessment of this year and plan for next year. We're assessing things. We're going to be rolling out a new initiative. We're going to sort of be focusing on another 2-year vision that God's called us to. And what we want to give you simply today is this right here. This is an intention card, okay? We've done this for the last few years. We want to give this to you because we believe your family needs to go and begin to pray about this. You need to begin to go and say, okay, so what my wife and I are doing, okay, here's what we've done this year. How can we maybe change some things, adjust some things so we come in next year with this intention, right? With this sense of this commitment. We're going to take these up in December. But I want you to take this. I want you to begin to pray about this. You start first with, what's my normal yearly giving, right? Where do I want to be on this? So I want to be intentional, I want to be faithful. Where do I want to be on this run? That's my normal. And then I want to say, Jesus, what expanded generosity could I give this year, this next 2 years to Vintage? And you give that to us. Hope that gives you a picture. We're excited for the next 3 months. We're excited for next year.